Hill, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, and it's our honor to welcome you, and not only here in this room, but online. The World Affairs Council is a nonprofit organization focused on presenting bipartisan conversations so that you can learn what's happening in and around the world. We have various programs online and in person and throughout our community. We have some upcoming I want to just highlight. We have a fantabulous luncheon, and it's going to be in October with David Rubenstein, so make sure that you register to attend that event. As well, we have a new event we've just posted with Robert Costa and his new book, Peril. It's a brand new international bestseller, been out just a week, and he's written this book with author Bob Woodward. It is Peril. It's on the events leading up to and post January 6th. We do have our Global Young Professionals. They'll be meeting for tequila tasting. As well, we are having a French-themed World Quest International Trivia Competition. So make sure you see and check our website to register for those. And don't forget, we are traveling the world. Travel is now open, and we are going to the safest, best places that we can find. We have a trip right now in Greece. We're going to Saudi Arabia, Mongolia, Egypt, and who knows where else. If you have some ideas, bring them to us. So I invite you to visit our website at wachouston.org. We're adding programs all the time. We're going to be back here in Sugarland in just a couple of weeks' time. We're still up in the woodlands. We're going to be bringing programming out to Katy area and maybe some other places in and around the region. So thank you all again for joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce now our program coordinator, Tatiana Euclid, who has the honor of introducing our speaker this evening. Thank you, and thank you all for joining us online.
Thank you, Marianne. Hi, as Marianne said, my name is Tatiana Euclid. I am the program coordinator for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. I have had the distinct pleasure of working with Rushan and her colleague Julie at the Campaign for Uyghurs to help bring this very important event to light. This has definitely been one of my bucket list programs to have, and I'm very honored that you guys are here to share with me in this. So, Ms. Rushan Abbas is the founder and executive director of the Campaign for Uyghurs. She has been an activist since her days in university in East Turkistan, where she was a co-leader for the pro-democracy protest going on there. Since coming to the U.S., she has been a tireless advocate for Uyghur rights. In 2017, she established this wonderful organization called Campaign for Uyghurs. Campaign for Uyghurs was founded in order to advocate for the human rights and democratic freedoms of the Uyghurs and other Turkic people oppressed by the Chinese regime. In 2018, her own sister was abducted by the Chinese regime and illegally sentenced to prison in retaliation for Ms. Abbas's activism. Today, Ms. Abbas continues to advocate for her release and the freedom of millions of other Uyghurs and often speaks for universities and think tanks. She frequently briefs and advises on policy and legislative responses, including support for the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, last year's Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act, and greater transparency for the Sister Cities programs, which links China to cities here in the U.S. as well. She's worked frequently with the State Department to engage with international civic society and meets with international government leaders. Ms. Abbas resides in Virginia with her husband, and his book is actually out front as well, if that's something you want to grab. I'm very honored to welcome Ms. Rushan Abbas to the stage to tell us a little bit about the Uyghurs and her own personal story.
Thank you so much. Thank you, World Affairs Council, Greater Houston. It's extremely difficult to talk about this unprecedented atrocity of the century that Uyghur people are facing today on our watch. Unfortunately, the international communities are still silent and muted. They are not taking any kind of tangible actions due to economic advantage and the other manipulations that the Chinese Communist regime is imposing. The Uyghurs lived in Central Asia for a long time. As many of you know, the ancient Silk Road, the Uyghurs contributed to the world civilization as a prominent center of the commerce for more than 2,000 years. This picture is Hakan, is one of the kings from the Uyghur kingdom from 744 to 1335. The Manchus invaded our homeland, East Turkistan, in 1876 and renamed it Xinjiang, which means new territory, new border, in 1884. And the Uyghurs fought back, established independent East Turkestan twice, in 1933 and 1944. Then the CCP occupied since 1949. As I mentioned, it sits in the heart of Central Asia, north of Tibet, west of Mongolia. The Chinese Communist government says the population is about 12 to 13 million, but according to Uyghur census, it's more than 20 million population. Land-wise, it's about 4 times of California and about 1.72 times of Texas, actually. Some pictures of our beautiful homeland. As you see some deserts and beautiful mountains, it's sandwiched between high mountains, desert, high mountains, desert, and then again high mountains. You all know what's under the deserts. Oil, natural gas, and they are also very high in precious metals and minerals such as uranium, gold, jade. China's 84% of cotton output comes from our homeland. This is the situation today. Basically, China's ultra-nationalistic racism and combined with high tech used to basically control over entire nation. The concentration camps and the Orwellian security systems with modern-day slavery, this forced labor, that is the reality for the Uyghur people. Qin Cheng-kuo, who is the current party secretary, he said in one of the Chinese documents that was actually being reported in Chinese media about those concentration camps. May of 2019, Randall Schreiber, who is the Deputy Defense Secretary, said back 2.5 years ago, May 2019. According to US numbers, US intel, it's about 3 million Uyghurs were detained in concentration camps. 3 million innocent Uyghur people, not charged with any crimes, and they were detained just because of their ethnicity, their religious background, and now probably the number doubled since the international community is just watching and doing absolutely nothing. And also, Qin Cheng-kuo's quote continues as, referring to Uyghurs, of course, must first break their lineage, break their roots, break their connections, and then break their origin. And that's the situation for normal people, like everyday lives, for people like yourself and myself. Checkpoints on every corner, GPS tracking devices on every vehicle, QR scanning codes on every home, and the people are going through daily checkpoints on every block, every 100 yards. That picture is not from World War II movies. This is the reality. Those are the Uyghur people. Shaved heads, and they guarded to the train, shipping off somewhere, blindfolded. And again, and I have to keep repeating myself, those are innocent people. Those are the thought leaders, intellectuals, famous writers, poets, university presidents, professors, successful business people. The Chinese regime claims that those are vocational training centers, but in reality, it's all the people who can lead the society are being targeted. Some pictures from inside of the camps, overcrowded rooms. The picture on the right, that's where they go through indoctrination, as well as that's where they sleep. Former inmates testifies that they have to take turns to sleep at nights. The Chinese regime perpetrates those concentration camps as education centers or vocational training centers, and the promoting with propaganda videos, young students, so-called students, are dancing, singing, or doing sports. Remind you what you have witnessed back in the Holocaust times. But this is just one purchase order for one camp. One of the AP reporter gone through hundreds of documents in Chinese and found this. And those kind of equipment purchased for those so-called vocational training centers. Some outside pictures, watchtowers, barbed wire, and the forced labor facilities built next to the concentration camps. Crematoria being built for a culture that doesn't practice cremation. The Uyghur people do not practice cremation. Those are some of the brave former inmates who are lucky enough to be carrying other countries' passports. Kazakhstan citizens, Egyptian citizens, and citizens of Egypt or Pakistan. According to those former inmates, these innocent Uyghur people are subject to systematic mass rape and forced to take unknown medications while they are going through harsh, intense indoctrination, physical and mental torture, and forcing their religious and ethnic identity. Basically, the only option given to Uyghur people today is you either live like Han Chinese and forfeit your ethnic identity, or you die as a Uyghur Muslim. Basically, with this, the Chinese Communist Party is waging war on religion. They are openly announcing to the world that they are rewriting Bible and the Holy Quran to make it compatible with communist atheist ideologies. The cultural and historical Uyghur buildings and mosques have been demolished or turned to pigsties or entertainment facilities. Copies of Quran, prayer rocks, and Uyghur historical books are brought over and being burned. Look at those two pictures on the top. That grandma, probably she's about 90 years old or more. She's being taken to the concentration camp because she prayed. And look at the picture on the right. That lady is being humiliated because she was reading some cultural religious books. I think stage 4 of the 10th stage of genocide is dehumanization. And Uyghurs have been actually dehumanized. Uyghur culture, Uyghur religion has been being called as a mental disease to be cured for, or like Islam is like cancer to to be cured for. When the Chinese Communist government claims that they are fighting the Muslim extremists because they are radicalized Muslims and they are engaging in illegal Islamic activities and wearing illegal Islamic clothing, and that's what they're talking about. The illegal Islamic activities are praying, fasting, or just going to mosque or fasting during Ramadan, or as simple as refusing to drink alcohol or eating pork because they are Muslim. Those are the reasons the Uyghurs can be detained and sent to concentration camps. And those Uyghur girls on the street, their clothes getting cut because those long shirts are being viewed as illegal Islamic clothing. This is before and after picture in Kuchar. The area once before, full of lives. People come over right after sunrise with their trading goods, bring their food, fruits, and they cook, they eat, they visit, they trade, they sell their goods, and then after sunset they go back home. And that picture was taken before 2012. And the one on the right, the same place during the daylight. What happened to the people? Imagine like Times Square in New York. If the place is vacant and nobody is there. Basically, with those concentration camps the Chinese government is running, managed to kill 4 birds with 1 stone. The Uyghurs are in the camps. They are used as slaves and advancing China's economy. Chinese government is making a lot of money off of Uyghur slaves, tears, sweat, and the blood. 2, they are sending Uyghurs to the concentration camps and they're vacating their homes and their lands and their neighborhoods for the Han Chinese settlers, as well as the Belt and Road Initiative. 3, when the Uyghur men are in the camps, the Uyghur girls are forced to marry Han Chinese men. If they refuse, the girl and her family will be sent to the concentration camps because she refused to marry non-Muslim Han Chinese. That's how the government will view her. And she's being called radicalized Islamic extremist. She and her family will be sent to the concentration camp. 4, the China is orchestrating organ farms. Starting from the end of 2016, after Xinjiang moved over to our homeland, the Uyghurs were forced to take medical tests and the DNA collection, subject to DNA collections. We were not sure what was that for. And then we started to see a lot of advertisings in the Arabic Muslim majority countries for halal organs. And that's the airport in Kashgar, where Uyghurs are mostly populated area. Special line set up at the airport for passengers carrying human organs. And look at that girl. That's supposed to be her wedding day. Because she's forced to marry that Han Chinese man. And all of them, look at them. Looks like they're attending their funeral. I call this government-sponsored mass rape of Uyghur women under the name of sham marriages. Chinese state media reported 1.1 million Han Chinese cadres moved into Uyghur homes to live inside of their houses, supervise and monitor their daily lives. Most men are taken to the concentration camps. The women are subject to sexual abuse. This is a video. There's one person videotaping, and then there's 3 men on the sleeping area. And there's an Uyghur woman with infant in her arm. Imagine there's So with the person who's videotaping, there's 4 Chinese men in that house. Imagine what happens to her. That's one of the witnesses from the camp for detaining. According to Rushan, the women in the concentration camps, they are subject to forced sterilizations, forced abortions, sexual abuse, and not just the camps, even people outside of the camps, Uyghur women, are subject to forced IUD devices inserted into their bodies. Basically, Uyghur women's bodies becoming a battleground of this genocide. Dr. Adrian Zans released a report showing the Uyghur population and the birth rates having plummeted because of those mass sterilizations and mass abortions. That's why I say this is the unprecedented atrocity of the century. Anywhere in the history when there's genocide or atrocities happening, if people have a place, little place they still call home, they could go home and find peace there. But for Uyghurs, they don't have that. They are subject to all kinds of horrors in their own homes. And almost 1 million Uyghur children are taken from their houses and sent to government-run orphanages. The picture on the right, this is not a prison, it's one of the state-run orphanages. It's armed guards at the front, double-wire fences. And then look at the Uyghur kids being dressed the way that the Han Chinese people don't even use those clothing nowadays. So why all this are happening to Uyghur people? Xi Jinping announced his Belt and Road Initiative in Kazakhstan in 2013. And right after that, in 2014, the first concentration camp was built in Lokmor. Basically, the Belt and Road Initiative, also called New Silk Road Plan or 21st Century Grand Strategy Plan or Blueprint for Xi Jinping's world domination. It's going through our homeland. 4 important legs of the Belt and Road Initiative goes through our homeland, East Turkistan. Puts our homeland as an epicenter, the gateway to Central Asia, gateway to Europe, Africa, Middle East, and the all over that the Chinese government is having their eyes on. Over 700 projects, infrastructure, airports, highways, railways, seaports, bridges, $4 to $8 trillion investment. Basically, majority of the world, 3/4 of the world. With that, the Chinese regime is basically using the power of the Belt and Road Initiative and the trade threats, debt trap diplomacy, as well as the manipulation in the United Nations as the 2nd largest donor to strong-arm the world and keep the international community silent on this genocide. And that's my sister, a retired medical doctor. I have been very active and vocal since this genocide started. September 5th, 2018, I spoke on a panel in the Hudson Institute, one of the think tanks in Washington, D.C., and it talked about China's genocidal policies while outlining the fate of my in-laws. My husband's entire family was missing from Portland since April 2017. His parents, 3 sisters, their husbands, brother and his wife, 14 of their children, 14 of his nieces and nephews. So I talked about that. 6 days later, my own sister, retired medical doctor, and my aunt, retired school teacher. They both were abducted same day from two different cities, about 900 miles away from each other, just to silence me. We have not heard any information on my sister's whereabouts. Yet, in December 2019, Chinese Communist officials announced that, oh, the Uyghurs graduated. They all went home. They are free. I'm still missing my sister. And the Bahram Sintaj is missing his father. Raida Dawood is still missing. And the millions of Uyghurs. They're all still missing. So we introduced still no info hashtag. And then I have been carrying my sister's picture everywhere I go, from Geneva to Washington, D.C., at the front of the Chinese embassy, everywhere on social media. Yet, Global Times Network accused me for stealing other people's photo, claiming my missing sister, spreading rumors about China, about my missing relatives in Xinjiang. That's the actual article, was published in December 23rd, 2019. Zhao Yizhuan, that's the Deputy Director in the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Chinese official, used his official Twitter account and tried to dehumanize me, tried to discredit me. That's his actual tweet. It's still there. And then Christmas Day 2020, we heard from third party that my sister was sentenced for 20 years on the terrorism charge. So the Congressional Executive Commission on China did a press conference on the 30th of December. And then Wang Wenbin, he is the spokesperson for Chinese Foreign Ministry. He forgot how they lied about my sister that didn't exist, and he announced to the world that my sister was sentenced, and they had her in detention. Yes, Uyghurs graduated, but to where? Where did they graduate to? Australia's Strategic Policy Institute released a report. Literally, the report says Uyghurs for sale. Yes, Uyghurs have been sold by pieces, like in a group like 50 or 100 or 1,000 or 2,000, sold to many of those Western brands that we all know or use daily to use on their supply chains, cheap labor. That's the report. And those are the companies using Uyghur slaves for their economic benefits. During the World War II, the companies continued to do business with Nazi Germany and later claimed the ignorance. They tried to say, oh, we didn't know it. Information flow was slow, and we had no idea what the Nazis were doing. This is information era. This is 21st century. Nobody had that excuse anymore. Nobody can claim the ignorance. So all this genocide is enabled by Western businesses. Technology firms have provided AI technology and the hardware like cameras and scanners. And investment firms have provided the funding to allow the Chinese companies to develop the greater tools of continuing their genocidal policies. Consumer brands like Zara, Nike, Volkswagen, they were once complicit with the Holocaust, killing of Jewish people. Again, Nike's CEO actually 3 months ago announced to the world that Nike is a brand that is of China, for China. And they are continuing, not only continuing, they are actually lobbying against the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. So we have the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act was introduced and it passed the Senate in July 2021. But Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike, and some other corporations, they are actively lobbying to weaken the act, and they continuing to do business as usual with China. U.S. State Department designates China's actions as genocide. Dutch Parliament, UK, Canada, and Belgium, Czech Republic, as well as the Lithuanian parliaments recognized as its genocide. During the pandemic, spring of 2020, China sent many Uyghurs, young students from universities and the high school or just graduates, young kids. They were sent to China proper. After the lockdown, when they shut down the factories, those Uyghur slaves basically were sent to open up those factories and then making PPEs and then the masks. And then the Chinese government claimed that unemployment problem in Xinjiang is supposed to be solved. And those Uyghurs supposed to send to get jobs. At the same time, they were bringing Han Chinese people with housing, money, and the jobs, and free health care. Chinese government is not just getting away with this genocide, but getting rewarded by hosting the Winter Olympics. Another few months from now, Beijing is going to showcase its power to the world again, just like Nazi Germany did. History is repeating itself. Also, the world community vowed never again, but it's happening again and again. Now with this Uyghur genocide and with the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. So there are some of the tangible actions, how you can help getting involved. And there's sister city programs has been used also as a propaganda about the CCP worldwide and allow the Chinese government to continue their genocide while acting under the guise of friendship. But basically, the sister city projects are Belt and Road Initiative's propaganda tool. Every one of us, we should think about what's happening to Uyghur people as that is the next world order the CCP, the Chinese government, has for the international community. So basically, saving the Uyghurs today or standing up for Uyghurs is not just about the sake of Uyghurs' future, but it's also the sake of the world, the free and democratic world that we all enjoy. Our parents, grandparents worked so hard to establish and protect, because the Chinese government is using the democracy we have in this free world and killing the democracy, killing the free thought, killing the freedom and the basic dignity of human beings. With the Uyghur genocide, the conscience of the world is at test, and we are failing it. And I'm all yours to answer your questions, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Rushan. I'm sure we can all agree that that was really, really powerful. And as the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, I can definitely attest that this definitely hits very close to home for me. Does anyone have any questions or anything that we can get answered by Rushan? Yes.
I don't know how you can be normal when you walk out of this presentation. Only you can go back and the way you felt before you walked in. And I'm trying to think, where are our allies? What are some of the local allies that are there standing up with this campaign? And we'd like to know them and work with them and support them also, because we can see the people that are not our allies. I'd like to know who are our allies here in America and internationally.
Just to reiterate that so everyone can hear, Farah, one of our wonderful guests, had asked who are the allies that we can work with, knowing that there are so many people that are not allies, and both locally and internationally.
Thank you. That's a very important question. Because of the information blockade and the China's disinformation campaign, unfortunately, many of the general public still unaware of what's happening. Many people still don't even know who the Uyghurs are. State Department, one of the people that we work with, someone from State Department, he said about 85% of the general public in the United States don't know what's happening to Uyghur people. The Chinese regime is basically using the finance and bribing some of the politicians and some of the scholars and the mainstream media. Something like this, it's not being reported in mainstream media. Hollywood celebrities always so vocal against any kind of social injustice. Where are they? When the perpetrator has the money and the power, they all turn around and they decide to continue to do limelight, to genocide, mass rape of the women and the children. There are so many feminists. Where are they? NBA. And also Disney. So many respected companies that we know are all giving in. But we do have some wonderful allies, interfaith communities, and the universities, students. Jewish community has been very supportive, the Holocaust museums. I did a speech in the United Nations, front of the United Nations, in one of the rally put together by Jewish students in New York. And one of the rabbi students, what he said, this really touched me in my heart. He said, we, the Jewish people, have not 1, 2, 3, but we have 6 million reasons why we have to act and help Uyghurs and save Uyghurs and stop this genocide. At the same time, Baltimore, one of the Jewish community there, invited me to speak this coming Sunday, and everything was scheduled, but last week they canceled because they said the community members disagreed to support such an event because they thought it's too political. Which part of genocide is political? Which part of rape, forced abortion, killings, slavery, which part of that is a political issue? I don't understand. And Muslim majority countries, actually, they're also being victims of China's disinformation and propaganda campaign. While China's killing Uyghurs because of their faith, basically using the war on terror as a pretext for this genocide, they're building the largest mosque in Nigeria. They're organizing Islam in China conference in Indonesia. The Chinese embassy in Malaysia is putting together a Islamic conference, inviting all the Muslim scholars from all around. So we really need to work together with in Texas, actually, Mineral Foundation has been a very strong supporter. And the Houston Holocaust Museum, actually, I'm coming back with one of the camp survivors, Zurat Davud, in November 4th, and we will have a presentation, as well as some of the mosques and Islamic scholars from Texas. They are being supported, but very sadly, large corporations like Airbnb, Intel, Visa, and the Coca-Cola, those are the one of the biggest supporters of the Winter Olympics. And when the Executive Committee on China did a hearing a couple of months ago and invited them to speak, the representatives from those companies, very, very sadly and shockingly, they were sitting and scared to death and just criticizing China. Just one word, acknowledging China's not genocide, just human rights records. They were so scared of just acknowledging it. If China, being on the other side of the ocean, can ravage those people's heart from so far away, and nobody can even say one word to stand up for basic human rights and dignity. Their sovereignty is lost, their freedom is lost. China is already winning over our great Americans. But I believe when I see people like yourselves and especially everything what I missed your last name, actually yourself. Shakaraka told us how much you worked so hard to pass that resolution to recognizing genocide. That gives me hope. That's where I gain my strength, because I am advocating not just for my sister, not just for my people, but I am advocating for this free world that I will live for my next generations, my children, my grandchildren. The freedom and the democracy. And I am doing my advocacy work at the cost of my sister's freedom. Our international allies, we do have the shared value with like-minded countries. Australia, UK is being great, actually. When Chinese ambassador was going to come and speak at the UK Parliament, this Speaker of the Parliament denied his entrance. He said he's not welcome to come in while he's sanctioning UK Parliament members. So canceled his event, didn't even let him come in to the Parliament. That's what we need here in the United States. That's what we need to call our representatives, ask them to bring in the new Chinese ambassador, demand information about US citizens' family members, and the demand to stop this genocide.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions or? Okay. With that, we'll wrap up the evening. Thank you so much again, Rushan, for coming and speaking and informing us about everything that's going on. I feel very lucky to have met you and to know you now. Like I said at the beginning, my name is Tatiana Euclid. I am one of the program coordinators for the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. This isn't our last event in the Fort Bend Sugarland area. This is actually us just getting started. Not really sure how I can follow that emotional presentation, but we hope that you'll join us on October 27th, where we will be talking about North Korea, Iran, and the nuclear threat to the U.S. Thank you again for coming out. We'll be here for a little bit if you'd like to speak with Rushan and have we have books? Yes, we definitely have some of Rushan's husband's books at the front if you would like to pick it up. They're free of charge, but yes, hopefully we'll see you on the 27th here again.